a king discovered that the most dangerous person in his palace was the woman signing letters with his name. An emperor learned that his wife had married another man while he was out of town. A czar signed papers in a small room while his wife rode through the capital in a soldier's uniform. Coronations, cathedrals, treaties, dynasties built to last 1,000 years. None of it survived the woman he married. Some queens ran to enemies. Some sent letters that became evidence. Some simply stopped defending him. 10 marriages, 10 crowns lost, and history forgets who took them off. Start with number 10. It looks smallest and gets loudest. London, 1820. George IV, after decades as regent for his mad father, is finally king. He commissions a coronation designed to outshine Napoleon's. New robes, new crown, a ceremony budget that would embarrass a small nation. There is exactly one problem. He has a wife. Her name is Caroline of Brunswick. He married her in 1795 for one reason. Parliament promised to pay his debts if he took a Protestant bride. He met her 3 days before the wedding, called for a glass of brandy, and reportedly needed help standing at the altar. He kept mistresses openly. She left England in 1814 and traveled Europe with a household that included one Bartolomeo Pergami, whose role in her life became a matter for royal investigators. The British government sent agents into Italy to gather evidence against her. The Milan Commission, servant testimony, hotel records, rumors. In 1820, George tried to convert that evidence into law. The Pains and Penalties Bill would strip her of her title and dissolve the marriage. She came back to fight it. The country, which hated the new king almost as much as he hated his wife, sided with her. A sitting British queen was cross-examined by Parliament about her sex life while the papers printed every detail. The bill was withdrawn. Then came the coronation, July 19, 1821. She arrived at Westminster Abbey in a carriage. The doors were closed against her. She tried 3 separate entrances. Guards with fixed bayonets turned her away in front of the assembled diplomats of Europe. She went home humiliated. 19 days later, she was dead. Her funeral procession, rerouted by the government, sparked riots. 2 men were killed. She had asked to be buried in Brunswick with an inscription she wrote herself. It read, "Here lies Caroline of Brunswick, the injured Queen of England." He tried to prove she had betrayed him. The country decided he had betrayed her first. She was queen for 19 days. She lost a coronation. The next queen lost her children, her country, and finally her life, because she took a lover the court could not forgive. Copenhagen, 1766. A British princess named Caroline Matilda arrives at Christiansborg Palace. She is 15. She has been sent to marry Christian VII, King of Denmark and Norway. What no one abroad quite understood was that the young king was severely mentally ill. By his early 20s, he was unable to govern. Into this vacuum walked a German physician named Johann Friedrich Struensee. He was hired to treat the king. Within 2 years, he was running the country. Between 1770 and 1772, he issued over 1,000 reforms in the king's name, transforming Danish law, censorship, and religion, all through a monarch who could barely hold a conversation. He also began an affair with the queen. A daughter was born in 1771. The court whispered that the child was Struensee's. The Danish nobility, watching a foreign doctor rewrite their country from a royal bedroom, decided this could not continue. January 17, 1772, a masked ball at Christiansborg. In the small hours, the Dowager Queen led a coup. Struensee was arrested. Caroline Matilda was arrested. She was 20. Struensee was tried, tortured, and executed on April 28, 1772. He was broken on the wheel and beheaded in a public square. His right hand was cut off first. Caroline Matilda was held in Kronborg Castle, the fortress Shakespeare called Elsinore. Her signed confession, extracted under pressure, still exists in the Danish archives. Her British relatives negotiated her exile. She was moved to Celle in Hanover and forbidden from ever seeing her son and daughter again. She died of scarlet fever in 1775. She was 23. She was a queen for 6 years. She was a mother for 4. She was dead at 23. She was arrested at a ball. The next queen wore a soldier's uniform and arrested her husband. St. Petersburg, June 1762. A new Tsar has been on the Russian throne for 6 months. His name is Peter III. He is the grandson of Peter the Great. He is also, by almost every account, disastrous. Russia has just spent 7 years fighting Prussia. Russian troops have entered Berlin. Frederick the Great is nearly finished. Peter takes the throne. Within weeks, he reverses Russia's war aims and returns conquered territory to Prussia. The army is stunned. The Orthodox Church is enraged. The nobility cannot decide whether to thank him or overthrow him. They decide to overthrow him. And they have a candidate, his wife. Her name at birth was Sophie of Anhalt-Zerbst. She had been shipped to Russia as a teenager, converted to Orthodoxy, taken the name Catherine, and married Peter in 1745. He preferred toy soldiers. She read philosophy. He humiliated her at court. She built alliances. Quietly, for 17 years, she waited. July 9th, 1762. Catherine leaves the Peterhof Palace at dawn. She puts on the uniform of the Preobrazhensky Guards. She rides at the head of the regiments through the capital. The garrisons declare for her. The Senate declares for her. The Church blesses her. Peter is at Oranienbaum. He signs an abdication that afternoon. He asks to be allowed to keep his violin, his dog, his mistress, and his valet. He is taken to a small estate called Ropsha. 8 days later, he is dead. The official cause was hemorrhoidal colic and apoplexy. Almost no serious historian has ever accepted that. A letter survives, allegedly from Alexei Orlov to Catherine, allegedly confessing that Peter died in a drunken brawl with his guards. Its authenticity is debated. Its existence is not. Catherine's role in the death is debated too. She never faced consequences. She ruled for 34 years. She expanded the empire. She corresponded with Voltaire. She built the Hermitage. She became Catherine the Great. Peter III has a small tomb in the Peter and Paul Cathedral. Catherine has an empire named after her age. 3 queens, 3 betrayals, a newspaper trial, a masked ball arrest, a guardsman's uniform. And this is only the beginning of the file. The next 3 cases are stranger. They are about wives whose betrayals were invented for them, by husbands, by fathers, by empires that needed a woman to blame. London, May 1536. A queen is being taken by boat to the Tower. She has been queen for 3 years. The king had rewritten the religion of an entire kingdom to marry her. He had broken with Rome. He had dissolved a marriage of 20 years to Catherine of Aragon. He had declared himself the head of a new church. All of it for her. Now he was going to cut off her head. Her name was Anne Boleyn. The charges were staggering. Adultery with 5 men, including her own brother George. Treason. Plotting to kill the king. The evidence, as it survives in the trial records, was thin. Vague dates, impossible timelines. Testimony extracted from men who had every reason to say whatever the interrogators wanted. The musician Mark Smeaton confessed under conditions historians now believe involved torture. The others denied everything. She was tried on May 15, 1536. She was found guilty by a panel that included her own uncle. She was executed on May 19th. The scholarly consensus, following Eric Ives, is that the charges were fabricated. The betrayal for which Henry VIII killed his wife was a legal fiction constructed to enable his next marriage. She had failed to give him a son. She had miscarried a male child in January 1536, the day Catherine of Aragon was buried. Thomas Cromwell had turned against her. The king was writing to Jane Seymour before the arrest. The Tower had no coffin ready. Her body was placed in an arrow chest and buried in the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula. That chapel still stands. Her daughter Elizabeth was declared illegitimate. 22 years later, that same daughter became Elizabeth I and ruled England for 44 years. She wore a ring, opened only after her death, that contained a small portrait of Anne. He said she betrayed him. History says he betrayed her. Only one of them got to write the first draft. Some betrayals were invented by the husband. The next was invented by the father. And it lasted 46 years. Spain, 1506. A young woman named Joanna has just been widowed. She is 26. Her husband, Philip the Handsome, has died suddenly at 28. She is the daughter of Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile. She is now, in law, Queen of Castile. She never gets to rule. The marriage had not been happy. Philip was serially unfaithful. Joanna was jealous, devoted, and unwilling to hide either emotion. A queen who loved her husband too visibly could be described, if you needed to describe her that way, as unstable. Her father needed to describe her that way. Ferdinand of Aragon had no intention of letting Castile pass out of his hands. He negotiated the Treaty of Villafafila in 1506. Joanna was declared incapable of ruling. He assumed the regency. In 1509, she was confined at the royal palace at Tordesillas. Conditions never improved. She lived there for 46 years. Her father died in 1516. Her son Charles inherited. He became Holy Roman Emperor, ruler of Spain, the Netherlands, parts of Italy, and the growing empire in the Americas. He also kept his mother locked up. Her signature was required on royal documents. The documents were brought to her rooms. She signed. She was told nothing about what she was signing. She died in 1555, at 75, having spent almost two-thirds of her life confined in a single palace. Her rooms at Tordesillas can still be visited. The betrayal in her marriage was not something she did. It was something done to her. The men in her family used a mad wife narrative to steal a crown from a husband who was already dead, and then from a daughter who was still alive. She outlived her husband by 49 years. She was never free for a single one of them. In Spain, a father used a daughter to steal a throne. In Istanbul, a mother used a court to strangle a son. Constantinople, August 1648. A sultan is dragged from a room inside Topkapi Palace. His name is Ibrahim. He is the last surviving heir of the Ottoman dynasty. He has been sultan for 8 years. During those years, he has emptied the treasury, lined his rooms with sable furs, waged a disastrous war against Venice over Crete, and made himself hated by the army. The women of the harem watched all of it. The most powerful of them was his mother. Her name was Kosum. She had been the favorite consort of an earlier sultan, Ahmed I. She had been the mother of 2 sultans. She had ruled as regent during their childhoods. She was, by 1648, probably the most experienced political operator in the Ottoman Empire. She had reached a decision. Her son had to go. Under Ottoman succession law, the sultan's mother and the harem played a formal political role. This was not a purely male court. The women of the palace controlled communications, ceremonies, and appointments. When Kosem gave her consent to the janissaries and to the Grand Mufti, who issued a fatwa authorizing deposition, the machinery moved. On August 8, 1648, Ibrahim was deposed. His 6-year-old son, Mehmed IV, was placed on the throne. On August 18th, Ibrahim was strangled inside the cafes, the small stone room within Topkapi where Ottoman princes were kept. The cafes still exists inside Topkapi Palace. Visitors walk past it. The women who ended him did not survive him for long. Kosum ruled as regent for her grandson. In 1651, she was strangled in her own apartments by servants working for the boy's mother, Turhan, who had grown tired of being second. The dynasty survived him. The women who ended him did not survive it much longer. 3 cases of women blamed, women invented, women weaponized. Now the file moves into cases where the betrayal was not just believed. It was documented in letters, staged in public, and paid for with the head of a king. Versailles. A queen is about to become the most hated woman in France, and she has done almost nothing to deserve it. Yet. Her name is Marie Antoinette. She was born an Austrian archduchess. She was sent to France at 14 to marry the future Louis XVI. She was called Madame Deficit before she had done anything to earn it. She was called the Austrian woman for her entire life. Then came the diamond necklace affair. A confidence trickster named Jean de la Motte convinced a cardinal that the queen wanted him to acquire a necklace worth almost 2 million livres. The necklace was delivered, broken up, and smuggled to London. Marie Antoinette had nothing to do with any of it, but the 1786 trial turned into a public referendum on her character. The cardinal was acquitted. The queen was destroyed. 3 years later, the Bastille fell. From 1789 onward, she made choices that could be defended as loyalty to her husband and could be prosecuted as treason against France. In June 1791, the royal family attempted to flee Paris. The flight to Varennes was reportedly planned in part by her. It failed. From that moment, the monarchy was finished in the eyes of most of France. In 1792, France declared war on Austria. Marie Antoinette's brother Leopold II was the Austrian emperor. She continued to write to him. She continued to write to a Swedish count named Axel von Fersen. Some of her letters passed French military information to Austria while France was at war with Austria. This is not a rumor. In 2016, researchers at the Centre de Recherche sur la Conservation used X-ray fluorescence to read passages in the Fersen correspondence that had been blacked out with ink in the 19th century. What she hid, we can now read. She was not sleeping with an enemy. She was corresponding with one, during a war, about her husband's army. On August 10, 1792, the Tuileries was stormed. Louis was suspended, tried, and executed on January 21, 1793. She followed him 9 months later. She was held as prisoner 280 in the Conciergerie. Her hair had gone white. She was 37. She was executed on October 16, 1793. Louis forgave her on the scaffold. France did not. She wrote her betrayal in code. In Rome, an empress did not bother with letters. She held a wedding. Rome, autumn of 48 CE. The Emperor Claudius is at Ostia, inspecting the harbor works. He has been emperor for 7 years. He was not supposed to be emperor at all. The Praetorian Guard had found him hiding behind a curtain after Caligula's murder and made him emperor almost as a joke. He turned out to be surprisingly capable. He conquered Britain. He extended Roman citizenship. And he was catastrophically bad at watching his wife. Her name was Messalina. She was in her early 20s. She had given him 2 children, Britannicus and Octavia. She had also, according to Tacitus, accumulated a reputation for open promiscuity that no other imperial consort had matched. Modern historians treat Tacitus and Suetonius with caution. Roman writers were hostile to imperial women, but the central event of her downfall is documented in detail. It is one of the strangest political acts recorded in Roman history. While Claudius was at Ostia, Messalina married another man. The man was Gaius Silius, a Roman senator described as the most handsome of his generation. Tacitus records the ceremony in detail: vows, witnesses, a dowry, a wedding banquet at which the guests reclined in public. When Claudius's freedman Narcissus learned of it, he decided the emperor had to be told. Claudius returned to Rome that day. Silius was arrested and executed within hours. Messalina fled to the gardens of Lucullus. Claudius, reportedly drunk at dinner, hesitated over what to do with her. Narcissus did not hesitate. He sent a tribune of the guard to her villa. When the officer arrived, Messalina tried to take her own life and failed. He finished the task. Claudius reportedly asked for more wine. Her name and image were subjected to damnatio memoriae. Statues destroyed, inscriptions erased. Coins bearing her portrait defaced by hand. Some of those coins survive today in museums, her face scratched away with a chisel. He erased her from stone. He could not erase her from history. The empress married another man. The next queen married the country's enemy and invaded her own husband's kingdom. England, September 1326. A fleet lands on the coast of Suffolk. Perhaps 1,500 soldiers, mostly Dutch mercenaries. At its head are 2 people: Isabella of France, wife of Edward II, King of England, and her lover, an exiled English baron named Roger Mortimer. Isabella had been Queen of England for 18 years. She was the daughter of Philip V of France. She had been given to Edward at 12. Edward preferred the company of his favorites. First, Piers Gaveston, murdered by the English barons in 1312. Then Hugh Despenser the Younger, whom the barons hated even more. Despenser and his father ran England as a private business. In 1324, they seized Isabella's lands and separated her from her children. In 1325, Edward sent her to France to negotiate a settlement with her brother. Once she was on French soil, she refused to come back. She wore widow's black. She met Roger Mortimer, an English baron who had escaped from the Tower of London and fled to Paris. They became lovers. They raised money. They landed in England on September 24, 1326. The country did not defend Edward II. The barons rose to join her. London rose against him. Hugh Despenser the Younger was tried, condemned, and executed in Hereford. Edward himself was captured, trying to flee into Wales. Parliament forced him to abdicate. His 14-year-old son was crowned as Edward III. The former king was taken to Berkeley Castle. He died there on September 21, 1327. The traditional story of his murder, involving a red-hot poker, is not accepted by most modern historians. Some scholars, following Catherine Warner's work, argue he may have been killed quietly or may have escaped and lived in obscurity in Italy. What is certain is that he ceased to be king, husband, and father in the space of a year. Isabella and Mortimer ruled England as regents for 3 years. Then Edward III grew up. In October 1330, at Nottingham Castle, the 17-year-old king led a small party of loyal knights through a secret passage into his mother's chambers. They arrested Mortimer in front of her. She reportedly cried out to her son to spare him. Mortimer was hanged at Tyburn a month later. Isabella was confined, comfortably, at Castle Rising in Norfolk. She lived for another 28 years. She was buried in her wedding cloak. She deposed a king and made a king. Her son remembered both. 3 cases: a queen who wrote to an enemy empire during a war, an empress who held a public wedding while her husband was inspecting a harbor, a queen who arrived on English soil with an army and left her husband dead in a castle. Now the file arrives at its last case, the one about a woman who loved her husband, destroyed him with that love, and ended a dynasty of 3 centuries in a basement room in a Siberian mining town. Yekaterinburg, July 17, 1918. A basement room in a merchant's house that has been renamed the House of Special Purpose. 7 members of a family, 3 servants, and a doctor are ordered downstairs. They are told they are being moved for their safety. A woman in her middle 40s stands near her husband. Her name is Alexandra Feodorovna. She was born Alex of Hesse. She is a granddaughter of Queen Victoria. She has 15 minutes left to live. Go back 24 years. November 1894. Nicholas II becomes Tsar of Russia after the sudden death of his father. He is 26. He is not ready. He tells his cousin, in a documented private conversation, that he does not know how to rule. He marries Alex of Hesse 1 week after his father's funeral. She converts to Orthodoxy and takes the name Alexandra. She wears her wedding dress under mourning black. They have 4 daughters. The empire needs a son. In 1904, Alexei is born. Within weeks, they discover he has hemophilia. He can bleed to death from a bruise. This is a state secret. Alexandra searches for someone who can help. In 1905, she meets Grigory Rasputin, a Siberian peasant with a reputation as a holy man. He appears, on more than one occasion, to be able to calm the boy's bleeding. What she knew was that when Rasputin was near her son survived. From that moment, Rasputin had her ear, and through her, he had access to the government of Russia. In 1914, Russia went to war with Germany. Alexandra was German by birth. The public whispered that she was a spy. She was not. She was something more dangerous. She was a devout believer in her husband's autocratic mission during a war that Russia's government was not equipped to fight. In 1915, Nicholas made a decision his ministers begged him not to make. He left the capital and took personal command of the army at the front. The day-to-day government of the empire was left to his wife. She wrote him hundreds of letters between 1914 and 1917. Over 600 survive. They are terrifying. She urges him to be firmer. She urges him to be more like Ivan the Terrible. She urges him to trust Rasputin's judgment on ministerial appointments. Between September 1915 and February 1917, Russia has 4 prime ministers, 5 interior ministers, 4 ministers of war, and 3 foreign ministers. The Duma calls it ministerial leapfrog. She signs her letters "Your own Wi-Fi." In December 1916, a group of aristocrats murdered Rasputin. They poisoned him. They shot him. They dumped his body in the river. It was, in intention, an attempt to save the dynasty from itself. It came too late. February 1917. Petrograd. Bread shortages. Strikes. Soldiers ordered to fire on protesters refuse and join them instead. Nicholas, at military headquarters, receives telegrams from his generals. Everyone tells him he must abdicate. On March 15, 1917, on a train stopped at Pskov, he signs a document abdicating on his own behalf and on behalf of his son. 304 years of Romanov rule end in 48 hours, on trains and in railway waiting rooms, without a battle. The family is placed under house arrest. In August, they are moved to Tobolsk. In April 1918, they are moved to Yekaterinburg. They are housed in a merchant's mansion belonging to a man named Ipatiev. The windows are painted over. Their food is rationed. Alexei, who is 13, is often too ill to walk. On the night of July 16th to July 17th, 1918, the family is woken and told they must be moved. They gather in the basement. Alexandra asks for chairs. 2 are brought. Nicholas holds his son. The commandant, Yakov Yurovsky, reads a short statement announcing the Ural Soviet has ordered their execution. Then the guards begin firing. The 4 daughters are wearing dresses in which jewels have been sewn into the linings, hidden in case of exile. The jewels stop the first bullets. The killing takes 20 minutes. It is not clean. The bodies were taken to a forest, mutilated, burned with acid, and buried in 2 separate graves. The location was kept secret by the Soviet state for 73 years. In 1991, the main grave was located and exhumed. In 1998, the recovered remains were buried in the Peter and Paul Cathedral in St. Petersburg, in the same church where every Romanov Tsar from Peter the Great forward had been interred. In 2007, the second grave was located. The last 2 children came home. In 2000, the Russian Orthodox Church canonized Nicholas, Alexandra, and their 5 children as passion-bearers. The woman whose devotion to Orthodox autocracy helped end the Church's imperial protector became one of its saints. Her letters, the same letters urging her husband to be harsher, are still in the archives. You can read them and watch a dynasty end in real time, in a woman's handwriting. She did not betray him with another man. She betrayed him with an idea. That autocracy could survive the 20th century if she just believed in it hard enough. He believed her. 300 years of Romanov rule ended in a basement in Yekaterinburg because a wife could not imagine her husband being anything less than a god. 10 marriages, 10 crowns lost, a queen locked out of her own coronation, a queen arrested at a masked ball, a guardsman's uniform on the wife of a czar, a chapel with the bones of a queen executed for a betrayal she never committed, sealed rooms at Tordesillas, a stone cage inside Topkapi, a wife writing coded letters while her husband walked to the guillotine, an empress marrying another man while her husband was inspecting a harbor, a queen landing on the English coast with an army, and a woman in a basement in Yekaterinburg holding her son, who genuinely believed until the last minute that God would not let this happen. Betrayal in a palace is never a single thing. Sometimes it is a coup, sometimes it is a letter, sometimes it is a woman who refuses to be erased. Sometimes it is a woman called mad by the men who wanted her signature. Sometimes it is love so total that it becomes a political weapon without meaning to. The crown is heavy. It is nothing compared to the person who helps you wear it, or takes it off. History remembers the crowns. It forgets who took them off. The palaces remember. The chapels remember. The letters, unsealed a century late, remember. The forest outside Yekaterinburg remembers. The map does not always remember what these families were. The graves usually do.